guys hear me okay? Just making sure because we had audio
Yes, you're
problems
good.
earlier. Okay, perfect.
Kelsey, I still know we're waiting, but
We will get started here in about 4 minutes. The Zoom protocols are on your screen for the session, so you can take a look at those as we're waiting these last few minutes before we get rolling. Biggest thing to remember as we kind of get close to the start is that everybody will be muted, but you should have the ability to raise your hand. You should also have the chat feature as well if you have questions. And also, as you're in the chat, please feel free to introduce yourselves as well. Let us know who you are, where you're joining us from. And we have just about 2 minutes before we begin. For anybody that was just jumping in, the norms for the session are on your screen, kind of the protocols. Big thing to know is that everybody will be muted. So please use the raise hand feature. You should have the reaction icons, and you also have the chat available as well. And please go ahead and use the chat if you haven't already to introduce yourself. Let us know where you're joining from, what you do. And we have about 1 minute before we'll go ahead and jump in. Okay, we have hit 5 p.m. on the dot. So I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing my screen. Please, everybody, just remember, use the chat, use the reaction features to interact. And I'm going to go ahead, stop sharing, and hand it on over to Stephanie and Kelsey. Take it away. Thank you.
all right. Is our screen, we can see that now, correct?
You are good to go.
Thank you very much. That was the big takeaway. When does it pop on? How you doing? My name is Stephanie Burton. I'm an instructional designer with Matoka Middle School in Chesterfield County. And I'm super excited to be here this evening with you guys and share the transformation we went through this summer with our PD.
Hi everyone, my name is Kelsey Pacer, and I am Chesterfield's new virtual professional learning support specialist. Prior to my new position, I was also an instructional designer at Bensley Elementary School in Chesterfield, and Stephanie and I worked together a lot this spring and summer, just making this event come to life. So we're really excited again to share our process and some takeaways to give to you tonight.
So before we begin, I just want to gather us all in here, and I want you to think for a moment about what 3 words would you use to describe recent PD you've participated in. Maybe you attended, maybe you facilitated or presented, but what 3 words would you use to describe that recent PD you have participated in? You're welcome to share them, but you don't have to. We just want to get those in your head, so I'm going to be quiet for a minute and let you think about it. All right, hopefully you've had an opportunity to think about those 3 words, because what I'd like you to think about now is what 3 words do you want people to use to describe your next PD? Because that's what we'd like to frame this evening with. As we go through these ideas, we'd like you guys to think about what would we like people to learn and get from our PD as we go forward. And then we're going to check back and see if you were able to take any of these ideas tonight or any thoughts and move forward towards your goal of doing that. So we asked that same question to people that attended the PD this summer just to see what they thought of it. And this was some of the response. You know, it's funny because when we started the journey, we weren't sure where we were going to end up. So let's see how we got there.
Yes, just like Stephanie just said, we were admittedly a little bit nervous when we got our first pieces of feedback from our event, because we really didn't know what this was going to look like. Because I'm sure, just like any of you that were tasked with doing professional development recently, it's a challenge to change and adapt. So historically, we wanted to share a little bit about what Chesterfield County has done in the past and what we did this spring and summer. So in the past, what we've done has been primarily very large in-person multi-day events. Normally, we set them up at our larger high schools, and we have thousands of teachers show up. They are usually department specific. So for example, the Department of Instructional Technology would run events like Camp Chromebook or Canvas Kickoff, and the teachers came to these events knowing that they were going to get to learn a lot about this specific topic. Our curriculum departments also did content days and mini conferences as well, but they primarily kind of worked in isolated events. We actually were moving in the direction of working with our curriculum department for this upcoming summer PD, and we had, as of beginning of March, a plan already mapped out for our summer PD. And we were actually going to share it with our team March 13th. But as you can imagine, a lot happened right around March 13th, and we had to start thinking differently. So we had to take some of the components of previously held PD that people really liked, like having choice and being able to collaborate, and take that and put it into a virtual atmosphere where all of our attendees were socially distanced.
So like Kelsey said, we were already in the planning process when we had to make this pivot. And so we had to go back to the planning process, or we like to think the replanning process now, and take a lot more into mind. And so there were 3 areas that we really had to revamp and think about again that we want to share now. And one was about diversifying our planning team. This was a whole new event with whole new criteria and all kinds of different items. So we had to do that. We needed to identify the new key decision makers, because now we were involving departments in areas that we hadn't before. Who were these new people that we were going to have to make decisions? And then we also had to plan with options. We were in a different environment now, and we had to have options for people to access this in many different ways. So first of all, like Kelsey said, Normally, we all had our own training events sort of in the silos, you know, math and science and English and then instructional innovation. And we had already reached out when we're starting to work with content. We really wanted to work on marrying the technology instruction, which we all know is important. But this brought on a whole new set of needs that we had to diversify even further and extend past our normal department. We had the benefit of being able to reach out to online teachers. We have a CCPS online department that's been an online school for 10 years, high school. And so we were able to call on a lot of those teachers who already were working with meeting people in a different environment, with conferencing online, and we were able to draw on some of their experience and expand our team that way. And then also being that we were working with multiple departments and divisions in our county, we actually had to pull on, and we're glad to add, more division directors, because now this event left just instructional innovation having goals, and now we were needing to set goals that the entire county could come behind, that could be shared with everyone in the same way. And then also being able to identify the resources that we need, and they would help us with that. So that was great. And so the goals that we came up with are right here. And like Kelsey said, before you begin any process, you look at what you get information you have from the year before. And we knew that the voice and the choice and the different options were important. And we also knew that we all had to learn a certain baseline skill. So having these key decision makers come together and set the baseline skills that we needed going in and the goals that we wanted everybody that attended to achieve was important. And also approving those resources. We no longer needed to have access to a high school. We now needed access to a super powerful internet that could record and do a lot more things than we had beforehand. So these key decision makers were involved in helping to approve those resources that we would need. And then the final thing, and most important, was planning with options. So this was a brand new event, but we had to approach this large, diversified team now with options that were flexible and accessible. We no longer had people in a building with us for 1 or 2 days, for half days and whole days. We were now competing with everything that is outside the walls of a school. And we knew that we had to offer plenty of time, plenty of dates, and make it accessible and flexible that way. But also we had to think about accessibility so that all of our teachers and staff that maybe had different visual or hearing or language needs, that we could make this PD accessible to them as well.
So in keeping what Stephanie just said about planning with options, we had a lot of options, because one of our big reflections that I'll give you as a little teaser right now is that sometimes you need to provide options because the people making decisions might not know what they like just yet, but they know what they don't like. So plot twist, right. Neither of those options that were on the screen were actually used. We came up with something totally different. And this is where the really neat, exciting part of our PD came in, because we were actually really able to legitimately flip this PD. And I'm sure you're in the same boat as you've heard people say things are flipped and they're not actually flipped, but we were actually able to do it. So we had asynchronous and synchronous components in our PD. So just to start and to frame it and just telling you about the container, we had 24 different optional topics in our PD. Each PD topic was housed in a module in Canvas. So we had one Canvas course with 24 different modules in it. Once we had the course ready the exact way that we wanted it, what we did was we actually copied it and sent out the copies to all 64 of our schools in Chesterfield. So the reasoning for this was that for administrators and for the instructional designers, which are the ITRT equivalent in Chesterfield, they were able to see at a school level and allow for some customization in the future, which was a neat opportunity. So right now, I'm going to walk you through what the module and what the PD process looked like for just one topic. So when a participant entered their Canvas course and maybe they were interested in a topic like meaningful feedback online, what they'd see first was a topic trailer. So you can see here on this screen, it's just a video. It was made in Canvas Studio. I mean, about 3 to 7 minutes, and it was meant to pique the participants' interest, let them know what topic would be discussed, what pieces and parts, if they're interested, how they could learn more, and then they would be invited to attend a live discussion if they'd like. So this was just a video to kind of set the stage And it also, if you see at the top of this screenshot, it shows some thinking questions. So after they watch the video, should they decide to attend a live session, they'd have something in their pocket that they have some thought points that they could bring up immediately. So from here, that video was not necessarily explicit how-to information, but just a front load of kind of like an anticipatory set, if you will. So say you watched the feedback video and it piqued your interest and you'd actually like to attend a live discussion. What you see here is a snippet of a schedule. What we had 36 sessions per topic offered over 6 weeks in July and August. So what you see here is actually a schedule. So if someone wanted to, they could pick Thursday, July 16th, and they would sign up in Impact U, which was what our PD system is in Chesterfield, and they would receive a link to a Google Meet. So from there, if they decided to go to the live discussion, this is where it got good. Our facilitated discussions were where the magic happened in this PD, and we owe it all to, we were the peanut gallery. We owe it all to the amazing facilitators, which were some of the rock stars in Chesterfield, which were, again, Stephanie mentioned it before, our CCPS online teachers were the unsung hero of this whole kit and caboodle. They had such a phenomenal perspective that they could share with teachers who, whether or not they wanted it, they were online teachers suddenly. They could give tips and they could give that empathy piece. It just made them feel so great. We had instructional designers who are thebomb.com, classroom teachers, and librarians facilitating these discussions. And so these discussions were about half an hour long. And the neat thing was that if a teacher attended a discussion, it felt very intimate and informal, but that was not the case. There was so much preparation behind these discussions to make them feel comfortable and structured and non-threatening, but at the same time, all of the facilitators had in their back pocket engagement strategies, questions. We ran scenarios by them. None of this was by accident. So that was the shining point of this whole experience. People loved these facilitated discussions because, again, they weren't about how-tos. It was practice. It was sharing experiences. It was really getting to collaborate and talk and get to hear from other teachers in Chesterfield. So that was the neatest part of this whole thing. So we know it's good to talk about ideas, and people wanted that, but sometimes you still need resources and you need how-tos. So in each of these topic modules, the subject matter experts and the facilitators who created these modules made a resource page as well. So if any more explicit topics, directions, what have you, needed to be included to really leverage this learning, they were added to this resource page. So you can see here, the woman who made this feedback was just, you can't say enough great things about her. She had so many resources. If you're ever interested in feedback, she was your girl. And then finally, at the end of the module, there was a short check for understanding quiz. And the reasoning for this was that schools were using their Canvas courses that they had their copy of differently between school to school. And some schools actually wanted to have a progress report, if you will, of what teachers were completing, what proficiency, if you will. And we did not have a district directive on how to use that, but we did have it available to them should they want to use it. And again, this quiz was actually based on the topic trailer video and the resources. So they'd have to look at those components. So essentially the flip parts were the topic trailer to get a little bit of a teaser, the resources to get a little bit of the more explicit information. And then when they came to the discussion, it would be with the understanding that they were going to talk about ideas and application. So that's why we thought this was just a totally different format than we've done in the past. So what we'd like to do now is show you a little bit of data of our PD. And I'm not going to talk through all of this because I've already been talking a lot, but these are some of the numbers and just the quantifiable pieces of our PD. And I want to mention earlier that we wanted to kind of encompass those topics of choice, and we wanted that community aspect. And as you look at this, I want you to think, does it look like we've actually accomplished this?
So we also, after going through all that, we did got a lot of feedback. So we asked participants, what made this format of PD work for you? And so these were some of the responses, and you can see, just to see, did we actually meet those goals? So we'll let you look at a couple of those. And you can see it truly was that collegial meet that, like Kelsey said, seemed informal, but was really structured and planned in a way to bring forth conversation. You can see that that really meant a lot.
All right, so this is probably where you're like, that sounds good and plenty, but what's in it for me? So we broke our reflection process into a before, during, and after. And so I want to talk to you really quickly about the before. And we're going to be very honest with you because we are super proud and just pleased as punch about the results of this PD. But there were some pain points, and we'll share because we don't want that for you. We want this to be awesome. We're here for everybody. So my 4 points I want to talk about very quickly: accessibility, organization, resources, and trial runs. We've already talked about accessibility, but it can't be talked about enough. There's 2 ways that we mean it in this topic. Number 1 is you need to have the supports in place to support your teachers who need audio and visual supports. That is a non-negotiable. And it becomes even more apparent in the virtual setting. So if you have not found yourself in a situation where you need to be providing supports, you will, and you should plan for it in advance. It will make your life easier. And even more importantly, it's going to make the people who need the accommodations for that accessibility, their lives easier too. And they deserve it, they need it. Also accessibility, streamlined navigation. You need the people who are going to be interacting with your PD, and that will be attendees, that's going to be presenters, that's going to be administrators. Think about all of those people. Do they have the information they need to know where to go, who to ask questions to, all of those little pieces and parts. And we want to tell you right now that if you have a workflow that already works for you, a communication hub, a format structure, simple is better. This is all new. So if you can keep some of those components that people are familiar and comfortable with, that's going to help you out a lot. Organization. I'll tell you right now, because I've helped with a lot of events, and while it's really nice to not have some of those in-building logistics, like when a whole wing of a high school loses the AC in August, virtual events still have a ton of pieces and moving parts, and it's so important to stay organized. And the way that I would explain that is, it doesn't matter how you're getting organized. It could be Google Drive, it could be Asana, whatever you're using. Your planning team needs to know where all of those documents are, where your to-do lists, who's doing what happens if someone doesn't do something. It all needs to be organized somewhere where you have access to it, because that's when you start losing track and dropping those balls, even if you're really well intended. From there, resources, you can see on here, I put a couple icons: time, money, and people, like human resources. Those are massive. I'm sure you know that whether it's a hybrid, in-person, virtual event, you need to know what you have in those areas, because if you don't know what you have and what your constraints are, sooner or later in your event planning process, that's going to bite you, and that's not good. So please establish that with those key decision makers as soon as you can, because then you have room to play. And then finally, speaking of playing, trial runs. So you might have everything ready, you're feeling confident, you're feeling good. Test everything. Get feedback on everything. That means focus groups on how you've structured out your PD to get that feedback early, to testing Google Meet nicknames, what have you, because the more you can test and predict possible hiccups, the better. It's just going to be easier for everyone, and we just can't stress that enough.
So once you get going and you have everything heading out, what do you need to do during? So this is very interesting. And because we were dealing with multiple people across division, it wasn't just the people that we were used to and was used to our workflow within our instructional innovation team, we put a few things into place and that we thought would help that. And so we just wanted to share about that. One of the main ones, and I know that they did this with VSTE by sending out information, is what do the participants do on the day of? So when you looked at the slide Kelsey showed, you can see that there were 6 weeks of sessions, and the sessions were at various times during the day. And you know that some people are going to run into problems. So thinking about what to do for the participants, and what we ended up doing was when we set up those sessions, our name and our school phone number, since we worked during the summer, and then our email was there so that participants could have someone to contact. Facilitators are often delivering a session. They're speaking. They can't help them. So we did have sort of a helpline set up for participants. Honestly, in the beginning, a lot of it was about Google Meet. People just weren't used to getting into that. How do I get a code? How do I use a nickname? But as it went on, it was more questions on how, if they had to be absent or miss. So that was very useful. And just the facilitators. So like Kelsey was saying, the total meat of this was, and what teachers responded to was that live meet that was 30 minutes and could go longer, but there was a chance for people to talk with their colleagues and to come and ask questions. And the comments that we got about teachers helping teachers, there are people that set up virtual PLCs, people they'd never known, but they met in that meet and they planned together. So in order to make that meet happen, this was the key. That had to look casual, but be prepared. So we set up check-ins, stand-ups, and brainstorming sessions for the facilitators. And I just have screenshots on there of what we did. So a stand up or a quick check would be, we had them get together and then we just went through each person and very quickly asked them what they were working on, what have they already completed, and what roadblocks do they have. Because like you saw, there was a online module component that had resources and videos and questions and a quiz. And then there was also the live part. So we did that to support them. We also had brainstorming sessions in order to make it look casual but be structured. We had chances where they got together, and we have sample slides there. We gave outlines like this is what a meet could look like. We talked about what would we do if you had one person in a meet. Is that awkward? Do we cancel? No, we don't cancel, but it looks different. Well, what do you do if you have 20 people in the meet? How are they going to talk there? So we had those brainstorming sessions, and those were well received. And then also during the middle of the summer, we had check-ins where we could talk about what are some celebrations, because when they got to share, hey, I had 5 teachers get together afterwards and talk about how to do this. We got to share that, talk about obstacles, and then what kind of help they needed. So one of the things that we found out, which we'll talk about in a minute, is getting lots of feedback, is the facilitators felt very supported, and they also would have recommended this style of PD. Not just the people coming, but the people giving it, even though it was a lot of work on them, they also would recommend that.
All right, so after, and although it's tempting afterwards to just celebrate and then get ready for the next thing that's getting thrown in your direction, which I'm sure is a lot, we really want to stress the importance of meaningfully, very, very targeted strategic reflection on every aspect. The question that I would encourage you to use for this is, if we had to turn around and repeat this exact event all over again, what would we do differently? So look at the feedback you get from participants. Stephanie just said we surveyed the facilitators as well. Get everybody's feedback, good, bad, warts and all. Sit down as a planning team, bring in everybody. Don't be scared. This is how you grow. Look at the feedback and collect it somewhere. Don't just talk about it. I think that's one of those things that is one of the most well-intentioned things, is when you talk about things and you think, oh yeah, that sounds so good. I'm going to remember that for next year. And then 40 million things happen between August to August and it's out the window. Again, good intentions. But what we recommend is really looking at that feedback, look at the quantifiable, the survey responses, take all of it, find those themes, use that. Think about on the planning team, where did you see the pain points? What did you think was really successful? Where did you have some friction, but it ended up working out? Write it all down and put it somewhere that for the next year, when you're starting with another PD, or even if it's not next year, Chesterfield does a lot of their big PD in the summer, but some districts do it intermittently throughout the year. Have it saved somewhere where come your next PD experience, you can pull it out, and whether it's, again, virtual, in-person, hybrid, what have you, you can take some of those ideas and use them to progress forward and keep building and getting better. So take it, save it, and actually use it is our big takeaway here.
So we've actually done a lot of talking right now and showed some screen clips of different forms and formats and check-ins and facilitated discussion exemplars and things like that. And we've put that all here. So this is our resource roadmap, starting obviously with one where we have some of the planning guides and timelines. So these are, some of them are spreadsheets and some are slides, but you can copy them right here. And then we go forward, and these are different communications that we emailed, or not emailed, but sent out to get supporters. There's some of the guidelines, setting exemplars, and what our videos and topics needed to look like were important. So we included those. Copies of how to create your own schedule, checklists. When Kelsey talked earlier about having everything organized, we had documents and folders where the facilitators could link, because like I said, we were working with people across from different divisions. So we had to have a way for everyone. And then you can see that we've added them to 4 and 5. And up here is some of the follow-up surveys, if those would help you to copy them. And then the final is the big questions for next time. So what we thought about that we needed to remember for next time. So we included all that in here in links and hope that you can use it. Now, as we get ready to close out, I want you to think back to the 3 words that you picked at the beginning of the session that you want people to say. I hope that you could have taken some ideas that maybe you will be able to meet those goals and have those 3 words be able to be said about your sessions.
So with that being said, it is 5:27. We do want to open up the chat for questions. If you're anything like me and you need more than 3 minutes to process for questions, our email addresses are linked in, and sometimes people will just throw their email addresses out there and not actually want you to email them. This event was big, but we so enjoyed, Stephanie could not have been a better partner in crime on this. We talk about it all the time still. We would love to talk to you, brainstorm. We didn't get into the logistics of this whole bad boy, because if we did, this would have been its own 3-day conference. So we can't do that. But if you want to talk more specifically about how this was laid out in Canvas, any of that, please feel free to shoot us an email. We'll be happy to chat with you. So again, any questions, throw them in the chat, but otherwise, thank you so much.
We did have one question come in from Matt. It says, it sounds like it went from at least starting in one department to including a bunch of people. Do you have any tips on navigating how to bring more people into the fold effectively for that planning process?
I think, so we had the Department of Instructional Innovation, we had the curriculum department, and then as we progressed, we had to bring more people in as almost on a consultant basis. And really, it was just being an open book, and at first, really just establishing those goals together and being positive and looking at one another's strengths and what we could offer, and then going from there with that shared decision making. And we know sometimes that can be tricky when departments, I'm sure everybody's district sees this, lots of departments have different workflows and different values and what have you. And it's just coming together and almost making a new department, if you will, just a mini one for the event at hand. So just making sure that everything is transparent and positive and working in the best interest of everyone. It keeps everybody on board and cohesive. So
And just to add on to that, we played upon their expertise. So going to online and saying, hey, you guys are the experts in how to engage people online. You've been doing it longer than us. Would you mind helping us? That really went a distance too. We involved people like the special ed department as we made these videos, and we were able to say, this is your area of expertise. Would you have anyone that could help us create this video? And the same with our EL department. So we actually reached out through multiple departments and shared the goals and then encouraged them to share their expertise. And they really were more than willing to help out. Great question.
Think on scanning through, I think that was the only question I saw. But as Karen pointed out in the chat, please make sure you remember that the chat will continue on in Discord. There is a room in Discord for each and every room that the conference has. If you have any more last minute questions, we are right at the end. But if you have any more, please go ahead and throw them in the chat quickly before we wrap up. And I am going to go ahead and stop the recording for now.